All right, guys, I got Matt here today from Tier 1 Tactics. Matt, how you doing today?
Good. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic, man. I appreciate you coming on. I know you've been busy. I understand that last month or so has been definitely something that probably pushed you a whole another tier up on just being busy, man.
Yeah, it did. Anytime there's active shooters, it always picks up. It's one of those fields that it's unfortunate, but not only government mindset, but public mindset is typically. I don't want to make the American public sound insensitive, but it's this doesn't really affect me. It probably won't happen to me. I'm gonna go on about my life and what I'm doing, and then something happens, and then people are really concerned that are touched by it, usually someone who's close to it or someone who just all of a sudden is emotionally distracted more than usual by it, and then all of a sudden business ticks up. It's how it is. It should be a preparedness thing, a free thing, like everybody has life insurance or home insurance, but they don't look at it the same way.
I think the vast majority of us are reactionary by nature, anyways.
I would have to agree with that statement.
Yeah, unfortunately. I think it's just nature of the beast. You can only categorize so many things in your day, so many things in your life. You rinse and repeat. You get used to that kind of scenario, and I don't want to say you got blinders on like a horse, but you don't want to deal with all the peripheral all the time. You'd be overwhelmed anyways if you were to take all the nuances of everything and try to say, "Well, I got hit by a bus today," or "Will someone shoot me?" Whatever it be. You
Yeah.
just can't play that game without going crazy, I would think. So I think most people just they like for instance, life insurance is real convenient. You could source out that I don't want to say what would a word be? I'm trying to think of a word for that. Just that little anxiety can be resolved with just a few bucks here. But you can't put money on everything. Everything does not get fixed with money. Sometimes money makes it worse.
Sometimes it does.
Yeah, I've
And
watched it, man. I've seen it.
and in this case, I tell people if I were in Montana, Iowa, some of the Midwest states that may have 30 miles from one house to the other, they really don't have active shooters. They may have a mass shooting on the books in the records, but it's really rare. So is this a concern for them when you put the hierarchy of other concerns in place? No. If you live in California or Texas, Ohio, Florida, and to be honest, if I were in Tennessee, Chicago, areas of this nature, Connecticut, I would say, yeah, it's probably a good idea that we have our people prepared because our percentages of active shooter are much higher.
Yeah.
So it is going to depend on what for you, like you and I, depending on where you are. I don't have a snowmobile. We could have the worst storm ever for a month, and we're screwed where I'm at. And you don't have chains and everything else. You live in the Midwest, this is every day for you. So what you're saying is true. It's what's in front of your face that's a concern. Um, but many have had it happen, like California and Texas, for example. To me, they should be, especially the leaders, they should be ashamed of themselves, and I do mean that literally. And I've called them and talked to them about it and stated it because it's been happening right in front of your door a lot.
Yeah.
There's,
On that note, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think anything we see as a negative in our society is an accident. All the politicians are lawyers.
yeah,
So it's not like they're dumb. So you can't have two guys like me or you sitting around having a drink at the bar and we can solve all these problems so quickly and they accidentally cannot. That doesn't seem like a reasonable argument even over a beer.
I would say Ockman's razor is very relevant in this conversation and what you're saying.
Yeah. On that note, it seems like we've pushed children to have no purpose, to have no meaning. We've caused the society to have no drive. Because I look at my grandfather. You know, he went through the Great Depression. He was a well-rounded man. He was very, very self-reliant, and he'd be damned if he needed anybody to help him in any circumstance whatsoever. And the falling away of having young men Uh, you can go down that whole rabbit hole in and of itself. But if you look at it, though, it's not the gun. It's not. If you have no purpose and you find out that the lie that you told yourself and the lie that other people have been feeding you has gotten you bitter and angry, what do you think the end result's going to be? He's just going to play video games forever? There's a limit to that. How bored can you get before you sit there and you start fantasizing on how you can get back at people and fix all the wrongs that were wronged you when you have nothing better to do anyways? What are you going to do? Stop playing video games and go work at McDonald's? I mean, what is an 18-year-old boy to do? Do you understand what I'm saying? We can wipe away all the other stuff. If you ain't self-reliant, you ain't putting a little effort in, if you're not looking past the peripheral view of just what you need to do to 9 to 5, your kids are going to get left behind because don't leave me alone. I need to relax right now. I just worked 8 hours. I did what I had to do. I don't want to look past the periphery of that. And before you know it, also, and people don't realize we're way more connected than we should be, and we should really pay attention to the people around us a little bit more. And it could be a neighbor, even if it is 30 miles away. It is your neighbor.
I could take a few points on what you're stating there. One I would say is that most people want to be comfortable, and we all want to be comfortable. I want to be comfortable, but and I don't expect the general public to have my mindset. That's an unhealthy expectation. And I don't expect everyone to do my career or my buddies who are on my teams or from spec ops communities or whatever else. It's a very, very small percentage of people. I mean, it's under 1%, obviously. So I don't expect that from people. But what I do, at least in my family, and what I would recommend to people who I love and around me or I've taught, is you at least have to have a few things down. I think just general situational awareness is a good idea. I think that having some food stocked, you don't have to be unreasonable and do it for 20 years. Some people do that. I'm prepared for a lengthy period of time because that was ingrained in me. And I can't find a reason to not do it. So if I line pros and cons up and I cannot find a reason to not do something, then I'm going to go ahead and do that. But you could have at least a month on your hands. I would have some cash on hand. I would have an emergency fund within the bank. I would have at least home invasion defense covered. I would at least know where to go in a tornado. If there were an earthquake, if wherever you live, whatever else you may be dealing with, hurricane, so on, I would at least have, if you're whether you are for guns or not, I would recommend everyone, whatever party they're in, because I could care less, to think about if someone comes in here with a gun, what do I have and can I actually do something? And if your answer is, if I want to be really honest with myself and I cannot do something, and without a gun, I really don't have any chances, and you putting your kids through your mind and your wife through your mind, and you put them into a situation of shock or yourself into a situation of shock, then something tells me you're not prepared. It's pretty common sense. If in your vehicle, I would have something to allow you to be able to get your vehicle back running and jumper cables, things like that. I would have a little bit of food on hand. I would have water on hand. If it's wintertime, I'd have some blankets. These aren't unreasonable things. I don't say you have to go through and understand how to get out of duct tape and rope, and which I teach and all those things, or how to do one person CQB, which is in a very elite skill that mostly the people who do it well are spec ops or top end users that are SWAT. I'm not expecting that from people. I don't expect people to know how to overcome an active shooter. What I do expect is for schools who are at high risk and states that the probability and the statistics show us they are, that they should be. Now, on the comment you made about children these days or anybody else, I would tell people that that if you think you're going to go through life and become good at anything, and you are not learning, and if you're not uncomfortable, if you're not making yourself uncomfortable, even if it's learning something on a computer, or if it's making yourself uncomfortable from a physical point of view to be ready for something, then I wish you had a mentor that would have taught you that.
Oh, I agree. I learned that the hard way, man. I'll be honest with you. I was pretty soft. I worked in construction in my 20s with my dad, so I never really had to put a whole lot of effort into my physique or anything, and I let it go. And in the last couple of years, I've really stepped it up. And it's easy to get comfortable, and it's easy to justify not getting uncomfortable. And man, is that a huge mistake, man? It's a huge mistake.
Well, everybody does it. I'm going to tell you this now. The best guys, I have a guy from Delta that's on my staff. I've seen him do it at certain stages. Everyone's going to do it at some point. We're not robots. None of us, we're not, no one's, if anybody thinks they're perfection, they're not. You're not going to be. Just recently, I've been doing BJJ for years. I'm a black belt under a really well-known Brazilian. I've been against a lot of competitors. I've been wrestling for 13 years and boxing since I was 5. All these Filipino martial arts since I was young. All that. What people don't realize is they see accolades, or they'll see me do something on live or a video I post, live wrestling or jiu-jitsu or something, and it looks like, hey, it's going pretty well. He knows what he's doing. What they don't realize is I went through years and years of being very uncomfortable and fearful to get to a state to where, even though a guy's better than me, the won 10 world titles, Samuel Braga, I'm not gassed and I'm not overly concerned. If I wanted to get out of the situation, I could get out of the situation. I will not beat him at his game, but I can get out of the situation. That's the whole premise of everything I do. You can't always be the best, and you very rarely are anyway. Very few people are ever the best, and if they are, it's not very long. And the purpose of me saying that is, about 6 weeks ago, I had not been tested since I was medically retired. And fighting, I got to a place to where people are better, but I'm very comfortable in the uncomfortable. So I wanted to test myself mentally and continue to grow mentally. So 6 weeks ago, I started doing something called Tabatas. They're just a high-intensity interval circuits, all it is. It's a 20 seconds as hard as you can go. It's 10 seconds rest. You go through 4 rounds, 3 minutes, 50 seconds. And if you're good enough, you can go through 4 rounds, which ends up being around 20 minutes. But the whole purpose I did it was not cardiovascular, although that's a benefit. It wasn't for extra caloric expenditure for our fit diesel side of things we do on the fitness world. It's not that. It's because the worst I've ever felt in all the trainings I've been through, where it's cold, they're beating you down, they want you to quit, whatever it is, the most difficult thing is when you're absolutely gassed, and they do this, and then you have to fight, and you have to go. And there's no ifs, ands, or buts, or you're in the ring or somewhere else, and you just have to keep going, or you're going to lose. And we see guys lose and give up. We do. But in our situation, we couldn't give up. And the guys who did give up got a notice to go home in this situation. And so my point in that is, some may not have done well, but they didn't give up.
Well, you got to get lost in that moment. You got to get lost in that exact moment and not see the clock, not see anybody else around you, just the target in the moment.
Yeah, exactly. And the fact is so lately, last 6 weeks, I've been very uncomfortable every day, to where I'm completely gassed. I'm still going, and it's for one purpose alone, because I have felt that my mental toughness could not only increase, but I had gotten too comfortable in boxing, wrestling, jiu-jitsu, even with guys who are better. So I say that because back to the kids and everything else these days or anything else, if you're not making yourself uncomfortable with whatever your craft is, I'm not saying you have to be a fighter or a good shooter, combat shooter, tactics, or anything else. That's a very small percentage of people that need to do that for a living or wherever else. But if you're not uncomfortable, and if you're not learning from somebody, there's a problem. And the problem is you're going to be mediocre.
That's a good point.
If not less.
And I'll be honest with you, I think we lost something in the 2 generations ago. When they got rid of the depressions, I think they made the biggest mistake in American history. Depressions, my grandfather lived through the Depression. He didn't die. It may have been a little humiliating to stand in line for soup, but he felt a sense of urgency. Actually, all 100 million men, that generation, felt a sense of urgency. They may not have kept it going their whole lives. Maybe they didn't learn how to do everything, but they learned to do as much as humanly possible to make sure that never happened to them again. If that meant saving water, straightening out nails, learning how to fix your own car, every man 3 generations ago made sure they knew the basics on top of doing the 8-hour shift.
Yeah.
And I think when we got rid of the depression itself, I mean a real depression, We denied everybody, every generation, that test that didn't have to come from a combat situation. Because every
Right.
generation needs some type of test to reset everybody. And the Depression was perfect. Oh, you went hungry a couple days. Well, guess what? You're going to make sure you put a little bit of money aside next time instead of seeing how far you can stretch your credit card. You're going to put a
Ex-
little bit, and you have no idea how good that was for our nation. Every generation was stuck in a situation. Oh shit, it's going to go down. We're going to have to get ready for it. You know, because your dad told you it happened. Your dad's dad told you it happened, and you're going to tell your kid it was going to happen. And you're like, these are the things my dad did so we could stave off some of the suffering. You're not going to die, and you may get a little humiliated by standing in line for a couple things, but you're going to make sure you're a little bit tougher around the edges as a whole society. And that's without even having to go to war. So if you look at it, I think we made a huge mistake on giving up a little bit of freedom for a little extra security. And it seems like it almost has like a spiraling effect on all kinds of other aspects. Because as life gets easier, because you got to look at it too from another perspective. A lot of guys had long-term views on what they did. The power lines and the streets behind me, all those men are gone that put those up. They're all gone. But they saw that what I need to do is for the greater good of everybody else. It's not just for my comfort, but for the next generation's comfort. And they had that mindset always. They were like, oh shit, that was pretty miserable. We don't want to go through that again. Let's see how we could fix, because I don't think anybody takes any consideration of what it took to get all those poles up, all those streets up, all those bridges up. I mean, if you look at the Hoover Dam, not a man alive built that Hoover Dam, but everybody's still benefiting from it. And I think the mindset has totally turned, and we're not even reaping the ramifications of these negative mindsets. We're just feeling the trickle of it right now. The dam hasn't broke yet.
I don't know the quote perfectly, and I've heard it said different ways, but it is true. Strong men create comfort that weak men become out of, and those weak men then cause tough times, and then all of a sudden the strength has to come back in, and it's this cyclical process. And no, they're not going to think about those things, because the fact is, most people that I run across in a daily life is, like you said, they have certain things they have to just focus on themselves. Well, we're all, I hope everybody can agree on this. Some may say not, but every one of us are selfish to a degree, but you have to be. It's self-preservation. Doesn't mean you aren't selfless and help other people. Some do more than others. But if you think about it, for you, the majority of I think the lesser majority of our populace, let's take that bottom group, impoverished group up to the low end of middle class. Most are probably disgruntled, woe is me, and it's the man is the reason I can't get somewhere, and I deserve something. And they're going to spend their whole life in that same scenario, because I'll tell you this, and in business you find this out, because I didn't do business until I came out. My wife owns them. I just do them. I founded the stuff. She runs it. In business, there's no backup. Nobody cares if you succeed. And matter of fact, a bunch of them would like to see you not succeed. And the straight fact it is, you're going to have determination and not care what anybody else thinks, and have a no quit mentality, which is the same thing you have to have through anything tough in life. Adversity is imperative to create success or innovation or greatness. And not everybody has to be a gold medalist in an athletic event. I have a friend who's a gold medal recipient, and that's not what I'm saying. But the same oomph, what it takes to get there, for that person to achieve that, is the same as it's going to take for somebody else to achieve whatever goals in front of their face.
It applies to everybody. It really does.
It does. It applies in every situation. It applies in your marriage, and it applies to everything you do. So if people are wondering how to fix this situation, I'm going to tell you now my personal opinion and all the knowledge I have around being around even guys. I learned a lot from some people were in contact with, or worked with or transferred from there, or my guys that left to go there over the CIA. And the reason I mentioned the CIA is because Some of the individuals they have are quite intelligent, and they're very pragmatic. They're probability researchers, is what I call them. And my point in saying all that is that one said recently, "You're not going to fix this, in my opinion, from knowing all the intel I know and what we're going into and what's difficult for us and who we have to be concerned about until we have tough times again. You're just not going to fix it." And that's why someone asked me if I'm very concerned because of the knowledge I have or what I teach, because most everybody walking around, like, they don't know the stuff you know. They don't know how to get, if you're kidnapped or snatched or whatever else and so on. I said, no, most will never need it. But so they said, aren't you concerned about just the kids these days are being soft? Absolutely. My wife and I even are concerned for our own kids. We are bringing them up in a different way. I came from a very hard background. Impoverished. I grew up, was born in a trailer, not a double wide, a single wide. Didn't have anything, wasn't given anything, not a lot of love in the family, that kind of stuff. Grandparents were awesome. Great Depression, as you mentioned. That dude was solid. My grandmother, solid. They grew their own food. I tilled the garden for them. They were all completely capable of doing what you said, self-sustaining on their own entirely. She could butcher anything, cut anything. Doesn't matter if it's a squirrel, it doesn't matter if it's a hamster, it doesn't matter if it's deer, whatever. They can do it all. They didn't need a refrigerator if they didn't want to. But coming from that background, my wife and I both, not as hard as me, but she came from a tough background. And she was a Division I athlete. She set a squat record at the University of Tennessee. She had a 3.6 GPA. She worked hard. And what she has now, she still works hard for it. It's why she's where she is. Our kids, we look at them, and we personally are like, man, they're soft. Seriously. And we're like, we know what we are. Why are they the way they are? And one day we were talking a while back, and I just looked around and said, what we have, we never thought we probably would, and we would never were friends with anybody that had what we had. Maybe she was at some point, but I wasn't. And I said, they don't know anything of tough times, and we can't ever expect them to, because they're never going to live it. They didn't live what we lived. They don't understand. And so what you're saying is 100% true. And even though my wife and I know it, and we have our mentalities and everything we've been through and the education we have, they still yet, even though we're mentoring them as best we can, they still yet are soft.
Well, yeah, we all lean towards the easiest, the shortest to our goal. The path of least resistance is always going to be the path we go. So if you got a cushy house, you got a nice life, you get a ride to school and everything, it's going to be very, very hard under those parameters to acquire the ability to do it the hard way from just true grit from inside. But it's not impossible. But I do want to go back to a point you made that's really super important. And you were saying that people are selfish and they have no choice. But even the most selfish person has to look at society as general and themselves, because you're a community unto yourself. If you drink beer and you eat bad food all day, eventually the future Matt will suffer for it. Yes. So you got to take Matt into consideration now, before, and after. There's all kinds of you. There's a community of you that will pay the price for your decisions in the past. But treating yourself good and not lying and being honest and being forthright with the way you conduct yourself is not only selfish for just the community of Matt, but everybody around you. I don't see a difference between being a good person and being good to your community. It all seems to actually unravel itself together. And
I would echo that, yeah.
Yeah, and every person needs to take into consideration, not only do you have to tell the truth, just like my grandfather was very good at telling the truth. He wouldn't say much at all, to be honest with you, but when he said it, he fucking meant it. But if you allow people around you to lie, it weakens you. I just learned this stuff recently because I would let it pass, or I would let it go, or is that worth the conflict? Yeah, that $1 that you did not give me back on that stupid coupon, it does matter. You're lazy, and if I allow you to be lazy, I'm going to get more lazy. And that shit matters because we're all way more connected than we think we are. Way more connected than we think we are. And if you go back in history, you see what happened to the Russians and the Ukrainians and all that stuff. That was not a game you want to play. That's not a life you want to live. And it was all because the majority of the bottom half got jaded, didn't care, and they allowed everybody around them to lie. And they created a little hell for themselves where they were eating their own kids. It was absolutely insane 100 years ago what happened in Ukraine. The Russians had a banner. I think the banner translated to English said it's still not okay to eat your kids. How the hell does a modern society get to that point? They had trains, they had cars. 1912, I think they still even had planes. They may not have had a microwave, but they were way too like us to be at that point. You see it in the Bible 4,000 or 5,000 years ago. I can let that go. My mind can, but we're talking 120 years ago. That's my grandfather's grandfather. Not even. That's 3 people removed from me. That can happen right here if everyone like you, that guy told you can't fix everything. Every person you fix 1,000 people. Every person you touch, because think about this. How many people you got on Facebook?
Oh, well, Facebook I'm not a fan of.
But my point is, though, 1,000 people, me being connected to 1,000 people is not so if you change my life, I could literally, like a ripple in a pond, can affect another 1,000 people. And they affect, that's 1 million people.
Now, that I agree
That's
with.
That's 1 million people like that.
That's 7 degrees of separation, basically. Now, I agree with that. Now, TikTok's where we have a lot. We have, roughly close to 400,000.
It matters. It matters more than everybody thinks. And that guy that's doing all the analysis, he's looking at it from a whole nother perspective that's actually not correct.
Well, and I think what his perspective is that the overall general weakness, I don't think he believes that people can't impact in a good way. And I believe he can because, like, for example, we've had 10 people go through. So from our Tier 1 Tactics channel on TikTok, we've had 10 people reach out where you can video reply. So you have some corroboration of that evidence that have either got themselves out of a bad situation or a life-threatening situation. A girl saved herself out of a rape from watching one of our videos.
Awesome.
Father, daughter in a New York hotel, home invasion or a hotel invasion. This Adalock we showed didn't let them in. They were prepared inside. A lady who got choked in a vehicle and got out of that situation. A guy was, now this one I'm surprised on. I'm surprised he did it because it's not usually how it works. He was held at gunpoint. He took the gun away with a drill he saw us do.
Wow.
So
that's wild, man. That's wild.
You can definitely affect lives. And like for our kids, as I was using that example, we definitely do. We work harder on our end because we hold them accountable all the time because it matters, like you said. So you definitely can affect change. I would say, in my opinion, and the guy that I was talking about that you're mentioning, I would say if you took it back to more of a 30,000-foot view, we don't really have a full pulse on how the nation is because, again, media is in front of us every day, and media really can't be trusted entirely. There's some what you can't discern which ones are the ones you trust or don't trust is basically what I'm saying.
It goes moment to moment. You can't trust. Yeah.
And the bad thing is that media news, they actually update articles as they find information. They want to put a shocking headline out, and you grab that, but the shocking headline can be completely inaccurate and deceiving to get you to see it. And then some of the article contents will be accurate, and they'll update it day to day, but you've forgotten or don't care about what you saw 2 days ago. And 3 weeks later, they've actually updated it to where the journalistic integrity is probably pretty correct, but you don't care. It's 10 days. So I think that, well, my point to that is I believe that most Americans don't have a good pulse because all you're hearing is negative and all you're hearing is what they tell you. Because all we know is the people around us in our neighborhood or we interact with. And that's really all we know. Everyone else we hear about is something on the news and we don't know. So do we have a real pulse on how our nation is? I don't think so. But I will say, I do think there's a lot of people who would rise to the occasion. There's still a lot of strong people out there. There really are. And I do know that. And most of those strong people are your lower to middle or middle class. And a lot of them are your hunters, and individuals like that are tough people. I do believe we have a lot of those tough people. I just think we hear about the soft people more.
Yeah, unfortunately. Well, it's more sensationalized because it's more entertaining to talk about the mess. Who wants to talk about Axemen all day? You know, they're cool and everything, but their
Yeah,
lives, the mundane part of their lives, are extremely mundane.
exactly. And what we want, just like the reason they have reality TV shows to do so well, they want drama. And a stand up dude who's doing a great job or a stand up mom is not drama.
No, it's the opposite of drama.
Yeah,
But that there's your pulse. So you want to define your pulse. There's your pulse. If your instant gratification and dopamine is the only thing that matters, I can pretty much predict how it's going to play out.
yeah.
So we do have a pulse. It's not good. But all it takes is one man to lead an army. It doesn't take a million men.
No.
Do you understand what I'm saying? And I don't think people realize their potential, and no one has anything to aim at. You know, we're designed for an adventure. We're designed for struggle. We're designed to get the snakes out of the garden. That's why we're here. That's the only reason why we're here. This is an all-in game. We're here for 75 years. It's not a game or a joke. It's not like we get a rinse and repeat. There's no mulligans. There's no, man, I would love to go back to 20, or that was a dumb idea. It's today you're bitter and angry, and today you need to get over it because someone out there needs you more than you realize. And someone needs you to do it correctly more than you realize.
Yeah, I'll be curious if the generation that we're talking about or two. I think some of them. I think most will come around because I'm sure you've met people who were late starters.
Yeah, I feel like I'm a late starter, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
It sounds
so,
weird. It sounds weird. It's almost like a conundrum being my age. But I feel I got 6 kids. I don't have a wife. I'm doing this by myself. And you start retrospectively looking back at like, man, I could have done so many things differently. And then you don't get a second chance.
no, you don't. Scholastically, I was late, and then in certain aspects, I'll say the men I've met that I fall in the group of similarity, where it's a very difficult struggle. You'll put mission and your men, your partners, your buddies, whatever, first, and you have to. It's a very weird world where you have to put that first, but then you have to come home and the family's first, but then at the same time, you still have to train and you're thinking about the next thing coming up, the next mission coming up, or whatever it is. It's a very odd thing to handle. So when I can define something I've done poorly in the beginning, like anything in life you do, I was conducting that poorly. It was very difficult to turn off one switch and go to this switch. It was very hard to compartmentalize that. So when my wife was first pregnant, the first child, honestly, she was a rock star, and I was well behind the curve and not helpful. No, whatsoever. No, just really a piss poor job is what I say it is. Toward the end, and she's pregnant again, then I stepped up, and then after that, I turned into what most dads, not you're in the situation, aren't like, where you were kind of a primary, just like she was. So I believe where that example applies, what you're saying, I believe the people who could be our weak ones now, I think they could come around because, like you said, it's almost like the Great Depression. When you have kids and have to provide, you are forced to at some point. Now, some still do poor. They do. We see it. I've taken kids out of families that are doing a poor job. I wasn't done correctly. There was, well more they could have done, which caused me a lot of adversity that I had to overcome, but I still had to make a choice. Do I do what they did, or do I be completely different and go a different direction? It's a hard thing to do. It's not an easy choice. It won't be fun. Make up for lost academia, make up for lost ability to communicate with people in a in a kind manner. That all had to come about. So I do have hope for them in that regard, because I think many will get forced into being decent people.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'll be honest with you. It seems like the new red pill mindset that's coming out there with a lot of these guys is it's alternative. It's cool to go to church. It's cool to be a provider, to be masculine. All of a sudden, it's an alternative to do all the things my grandfather did as a norm. Is becoming an alternative lifestyle that's becoming very popular.
Now that is, I had not heard about as much until you just said that. I mean, I've heard a little bit, but to have you say it makes me go, okay, that must be more of a thing than I thought it was.
It is,
And
man. And it blows my mind because I've talked to a lot of people. You are number 71, and I have to talk to a lot of people to get to 71. So I'll be honest with you, it'll blow your mind. I'm actually interested. Were you Special Forces?
I was not. A lot of people will think that because they'll watch videos or something and see other guys, and or some of the skill sets I have will really mirror that, and that's where it can get confusing. Believe it or not, the only thing I've ever dealt with in the private sector is more guys trying to question what I'm doing, not because I can do it, but because it's so similar to that. But I wasn't that. They're like, I don't get that. So I was in an agency as a counterterrorism agent that was the tactical side of it, the training side of it was set up by individuals who were special operations, and typically the ones who really headed it up were what they call tier 1 units. And a tier 1 unit, for the people who don't know, are like SEAL Team 6 or Delta. Okay. They're really called the unit or CAG, but the general public calls them Delta. And not to say that there wasn't tier 2 guys, which are your Green Berets or SEALs or Rangers and so on like that. Air Force pararescue guys. They're actually quite talented. They don't get a lot of attention or movies made about them, but they're actually really talented people. Really good medics, really good at rescue, and I have all the other tactical skills. But and MARSOC and so on. So the administrative side of the house was headed up by some other guys in the government who've been agents. And to be honest with you, on podcasts, I don't talk about them a whole lot because I don't want to give them the attention. They were really leaders for the wrong reasons, and we had a lot of bad leadership. And that's not some guy that's coming out, because I was an undergraduate. I graduated first in my class. I was an instructor, which is the top 1% in our agency. I was a lead active shooter instructor. I was a co-lead defensive tactics instructor. I was a field office fitness coordinator. I taught legal with another buddy of mine, and I still taught our mission tactics to other agencies and different entities that wanted that training. So it's not a guy who got medically retired out that wasn't one of their golden boys, you could call, that did well. I did well, and I'm telling you, the leadership was very bad. So, but mostly it was spec ops guys. And what happened was our agency was really great about some things and training. What they weren't good about, I didn't think, was we were overseas. A lot of times I was in Kuwait or the Middle East, and they didn't give us any skills to if you were going to get snatched. We had great situational awareness, great escape and evasion, but nothing to if you were taken into custody. And so I would ask guys that were, because I knew they knew it, and so our own guys on our teams would teach us, some guys who didn't know, and then some of the things we knew. So it was a really cool environment. The only other place like this that is similar to me is over the CIA. They have contractors. We all know it from the 13 Hours movie, for example, for everybody to conceptualize who are these people. The reason it's great over there is because it's chock full of a bunch of different special operators. They're not just the SEALs by themselves doing SEAL things. It's like, well, this guy's a Green Beret, and this guy was MARSOC, and this guy's a Ranger, and he was a cold weather guy. This guy was a jungle guy, and this guy over here was Delta. And when you bring all that experience together, and what you find out about those people is, man, they may be very confident or cocky at times, but what you learn about guys from that level, it's like the best athletes we know of. The ones who become really great, they're students always, and they'll put their ego aside to learn. They don't care who from. They do not care. And I've always had that mentality. If there's a secret sauce to my success of what I've been able to do to have because not many people have done as many martial arts at the level I've done them at for as long as I've done them, or fitness stuff that I know from science-based or strength coaching at University of Tennessee when I was. It's because I've always been someone that's willing to learn. I don't care if you teach me something new. See, a lot of guys in law enforcement, military, not at those levels, it's an ego problem where they can't learn from you because they have to know more than you. They have to be tactical Tommy. And that's not how I work. Thankfully, I'm built that way. It wasn't hard for me to say, I want to learn this. Can you show me this? So, my main mission, to answer your question overall, is it was to, and I'm articulating in a way that I've never said it publicly what it is. It's not worth it, to be honest. There's pros to it. I get a lot more cool attention factor, and then there's some negatives to it as well. And some are security risk, in my opinion. Some of my guys have said their name. I just don't think it's the best, but I have kids and family to think about too, in my opinion. But I was a counterterrorism agent that did domestic and international missions to retake a hostile environment in an unconventional CQB setting, close quarter battle setting, using small unit tactics, even down to a one-person CQB, which is a rare thing. Yeah. And a very controversial topic in tactics world anyway. And that was the primary mission. Secondary technically was covert surveillance and reaction to contact or a terrible situation that could be very detrimental to U.S. citizens and so on. So because of the nature of the importance of that mission, we had the best of the best. We had the money for it. We had the training for it. So most people in the government may shoot 4 times a year, like ATF, DEA, or Secret Service. Yeah, we qualified 4 times a year like them, but some of us shot weekly. Some people shoot a couple thousand rounds before they get out of their academy in the federal law enforcement community. They have a 22-week academy, depending on who they are. We had 10,000 rounds down out of the gun within 8 weeks. Awesome. I had 30,000 rounds down my gun by the end of my training before I even started the job. So I consider myself very fortunate because I got to be around the best of the world, and you weren't a spec ops guy to do it. It was very, very odd. Not that we don't have government teams like FBI HRT. I got a buddy on it right now. That's a tier 1 unit. They're elite, just like other spec ops, and they're respected that way. So it's not that it doesn't exist in the government. I'm just saying, as a whole, the government is not as squared away tactically or capable typically as a spec ops unit. So that's my generalized background.
That's awesome. Very cool, man. On that note, why don't we actually get into the questions that caused me to even talk to you, man? How did you get into social media, and what got you started on TikTok?
I got medically retired. It was a difficult transition for me. I know I have friends that have more of a difficult situation coming out of spec ops. They really have a tough time. I had a difficult time. It was abrupt. I had an injury on the job and during training. It was the weirdest training injury. Actually, I just for full scope, I had strength trained that day. I was wrestling with a buddy of mine who was teaching me. He was an All-American collegiate wrestler. I went and wrestled with him, came back in, and I was doing sprints on a treadmill. And our incline was, I think it was 14 or 14 and a half incline, whatever it was. Or no, sorry, 12 incline, like 14 and a half miles per hour. But it was sprints for as long as I could. And then I'd come off, get my breath, and go back again. And my right foot hit down, struck, and I came off the treadmill. Like pain fell off of it. At videos.
Yeah, but I'm not going to lie to you. That's pretty intense. 14 miles an hour at a 12 incline you were pushing it to the limit.
Yeah.
Because you look like you're at least my size. I'm 6 foot, 200 pounds. 180, 190.
I'm about 205-ish, around that range, 6 foot. Yeah.
That's
and so I basically had an MRI done and then another MRI, and our agency was very particular about medical, and I had 15 points, like 15 categories of check boxes you have to check off on. And to give you an example, I think we all thought they were unrealistic, but still, you can't have joint abnormality. Okay. Well, now I do. Then you have to be able to fight two people off at one time at a disadvantaged position. It's very specific.
Yeah, that's not like picking up a box that weighs 30 pounds.
No, and other agencies don't have that. And I was a federal task force agent assigned to a DEA task force before I ever got in counterterrorism. That was where I got a lot of high risk raids and a lot of experience. And they said, "Hey, man, you're done," just like that.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you're in a competitive market also, like you're playing professional football or something. There's 20 young men willing, ready, and able to take your place at any given moment.
Yeah,
so that puts you as like a quarterback, man. You hit like 30, 35, and you know for a fact there's a guy behind you ready.
Yeah, but what happened was they basically said, "Look, you're a liability for U.S. citizens, and you're a liability for your team." Now, when they said it was liability for my team, I understood immediately. I was good with it. I wasn't good with it, but I was good with it to leave. So my wife encouraged me. She's like, "Look, you have active shooter knowledge. This whole program you designed while you're there because you're tired of seeing the problem, but you can't use it because you're in the government. You can't teach anything outside of the curriculum." She goes, "You have a lot of fitness knowledge, and it's science-based. It's something not really heard of, and you've been a student for a long time." She goes, "You have all these skills to help people in self-defense or home invasion defense or getting out of rope or kidnappings or whatever." She goes, "You got to use that." She goes, "You're forgetting that God has a plan for you because you know that." And she goes, "You're not just totally distraught, but you're down. You're situationally depressed. That's what this is." And she said, "You've got to put all those things into action." So she created the businesses because I got medically retired and have a pension. And she's like, "You deserve that pension. I'll run the companies. You found it." And she double checked. I double checked. The IRS is like, "Hey, yeah, you can work for your wife for free. You can do anything you want for free." So it gave me the freedom to not have to be concerned with all that and just do what I love. And we'll see if it helps people.
Yeah.
And then it turned into, I started social media, of course, like anything else in business, social media. I didn't have any education or knowledge, and I was terrible. I mean, terrible. My wife's kind of comical, and she's good at impressions and making fun of it. And even though she has a good education to help me out, it's like I told her. She's like, "Why are you not getting this?" And I said, "Because it's like martial arts. I can tell you how to do a move, but it takes time to be good at the move. I don't care if you tell the person the right answer. It takes time." So we got on social media. I finally started getting better. Hopped on TikTok. Not the earliest, but earlier on, pre-pandemic, just right at the pandemic start. And then just started doing content I thought people would like that was short form. And they liked it on the Tier 1 Tactics side. So, and it just kind of exploded for us. And then the fitness side on Fit Diesel's TikTok, it's not as big as the other one. It's a very obviously saturated market, but it jumped and our business has changed. And then people started finding out about active shooter programs, and I put it in some places before. So the beginning of it was just to give me an outlet to help people out, even though I was bad at it. And then it turned into something where like, no, hey man, because I never thought I was just that much better than anybody else. I just don't think that way. I think I have skill and everything else. But apparently, from what I've looked, there's just not a lot of people online doing what we do. I mean, I can name a handful of people I know out there doing it. And apparently people want it, which I was surprised. I thought it would be kind of controversial. Even some of the home invasion defense, I thought guns and things. No, man, it's some of my highest views is stuff like that. They actually care about, give me an answer in less than a minute or less than 2 minutes on how to navigate this hallway into my home and what's the best position to be in if somebody brings a gun in my house and tries to hurt my family. So, and that's how it came about, really.
That's awesome. And I'll be honest with you, I want to go back to what we were saying about putting yourself together and being ready for anything, just being the honest and best version of yourself no matter what. Your wife was ready before that day happened when you medically retired to transition to the next thing. She put herself together before it even happened. So when you were a team and a couple, it just transitioned right over. And people don't realize this. The number one unstoppable team is a male and female team.
Oh, well, I just said that on another podcast, actually, recently. I just said they've always said that a great man has a great woman behind him. And I said that's true in my case. And
well, it's more than that, though. It's just you look at there's so many examples, but I'm not going to get into it. It's just the dynamic of a male and female, two minds set on one goal, working together, one submissive, one in charge, and everything structured properly the way it was designed to be, is completely and utterly unstoppable. And I don't want to get into the politics of that because we already did the politics thing. I want to stick with, but that's something that I saw immediately come to the front when you're telling that story. Your wife was ready for the circumstance you didn't see coming because she did the right thing by getting herself as well prepared. She just made the best person of herself ahead of time. And I think that's one of the reasons why it is important. You put yourself together and you affect more people than you know at a moment when you didn't realize would even exist. And that could be the critical moment that changes everything.
Yeah, and when it comes to so all elite teams, whether it's sports or spec ops, and I'm talking more from a tactical point of view because I have the most experience there. But sports teams, when I was a strength coach, they all have their designated positions. We all know that: quarterback, wide receiver, D-back, and they're specialized, special units or special teams. Same thing. My wife has specific skill sets that are not my strong suits.
But they complement you quite well, don't they?
Right. They complement perfectly well. Like she can say
that way. She was designed that way, bro.
Yeah. She had an idea yesterday regarding active shooter and giving it the best chance to go further in Tennessee because they put an appropriations bill to put in schools and there's a million examples I could give, but it's, on a post, she's like, hey, it would be better if you would do this and resonate with people more with these words versus these, or this would be funny or cool. And it would bring this aspect into it. So we're our own special unit where she has skills. And when she has a skill, I don't typically, you're always gonna have some pushback, but typically I don't push back. I'm like, okay, what do you want me to do? Or what do you mean? Because again, that's putting ego aside. Constructive criticism, something that I personally take very serious, that you can take it on well. So yeah, what you mentioned is exactly right. You can't be great by yourself. No one can.
That's a good.
You got to have it.
Yeah. And pride comes before a fall. And you've said multiple times that you have no problem tipping the hat and letting someone teach you something. And I'll be honest with you, I think that's what we're missing. And not the political, well, I guess so in the political, but so much of society is, I'm on this camp, you're on that camp, there's nothing I can ever learn from you no matter what you say. And I think that's a huge mistake. Because if you're in an echo chamber with someone that always agrees with you, you're never going to learn anything you don't already know.
Yes, and if you're a leader and you're only as good as the advisors you have around you, and what if those advisors are bad? What if those advisors have egos?
You won't know if you're if you got a bunch of yes men around you. You won't even know. You won't even know until it's too late. Your pants are down and it's all over, man. It's over. You got caught.
Yeah, like my wife was just one of mine. She said, if you're the smartest person in the room, find somebody else to get in the room.
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah, you do have to have an equilibrium on that too. So there's multiple, but again, if you don't put yourself together and you're not telling the truth and you're not being honest with yourself so that you can be honest with others, how would you even know you're in that situation?
You won't, and that's what you mentioned. So
putting yourself together affects the people around you more than you realize in your whole society. And one person can affect 1 million, and 1 million can affect 1 billion. It's not that hard. It's not that, and I know it's true. If it wasn't true, then no one would bother playing it out, and we would all be nihilistic, and everybody would be an active shooter.
A perfect example of this too would be if we just, you don't have to get crazy political, but if you take the CDC when they said that they couldn't pass Corona person to person, that was a group of people, and down from one person probably made that decision that affected us all majorly. And it was inaccurate too. So yes, wow. one person could affect many in a great way, or they can affect them in a negative way.
And it's not limited to the top down. You can have
No.
you can have a Spartacus that affects everybody. Actually, historically, it's the Spartacus that makes the biggest impact. I mean, you can do it from the top down. I'm not saying you can't do it from the top down. George Washington proved you can. But it doesn't matter where you are on that pyramid. Everybody has the ability to affect 1 billion people. Everybody. And actually, I'll be honest with you, we were designed for the purpose of finding out what our meaning is, aiming for our target, and doing the best we can to get rid of those snakes out of that garden and become that person that does affect 1 billion people. Because so many people say stupid things like, well, it's not stupid, but it's small-sighted. What if we all tried our best? But what if, I got a question that's even more profound, what if we just stop trying to make it worse? What if 1 billion people just stop trying to make it worse? Stop cheating, stop lying, stop manipulating, and just tried to make it a little less worse? How much different would the world be if just 1 billion people stopped making it worse? Not trying to make it better, just stop trying to make it worse.
An experiment I'd like to see.
Well, it's not impossible. It's not impossible. The United States took over the world twice, and we gave it back to the knuckleheads that didn't even deserve it. So it's not like it's impossible. I think it's totally possible. I think the analysis that we don't have the pulse is wrong. The analysis that we can't change every course direction of every aspect of the problem, I think it's completely reversible. I think everything is. I would go as far as to say we were designed to make it reverse.
I'll say, I'm gonna move them. I'm gonna keep talking though. I would have to say that I agree with you 100%. And I'll be honest, I hope it happens from a government point of view, because the fact that we're facing some concerns that I have internationally would be great to have what you're saying occur, and I hope it does. To be honest, I'm just talking about more from a China point of view. Other people may have concerns, but my biggest concern is how we're handling China and what they're doing, because I don't think the everyday American has a clue what's going on.
It's concerning. It's concerning. I'm questioning: should I be buying gold? Should I have my money in a big bank? Should I have my money in stock? Because at the end of the day, the rich people are not going to lose their money. I don't care how this whole international thing plays out. If you think Nancy Pelosi is going to lose all her money, you're sadly mistaken. You know, I mean, she's going to keep her money. So the question is, how are they going to keep their money? Because even if we have some great reset with the dollar, or we go Bitcoin, whatever version of reality we're looking at down the pipeline, oil is still going to get transferred around the world. Gold is still going to be the standard. And if you look at it historically, one of the reasons why we got off the gold standard was there was a very good reason for it. And in Europe, they were looking at poor countries and rich countries, and they said, well, both of them have the same amount of gold. Both of them have the same amount of population, but one had factories and one didn't have factories. One's standard of living was higher. So they made this whole assumption that your production of goods and services was the measure of your wealth. And it wasn't like preposterous, because if you make all the cars, you're never going to be poor. You know what I mean? That mindset. But just remembering that the rich don't normally tend to lose their wealth. I mean, in America, we played this one game where, go ahead. What were you going to say?
I was going to say that it's not. I know everybody in the news is doing this, but I don't believe the news in this regard, just because of the contacts I have and where I came in the government and those resources I have there. Talking to my buddies still, it's not the yen or the dollar I'm concerned about so much. Because I'll say this: if the Fed goes under ever, that's everybody. Period. And that's just not a realistic thing to happen. But what I'm more concerned about is that America, even though we may be bad in some ways, we actually play by the rules, and we try to pursue democracy, and we try to, most importantly, don't think leaders want democracy as much. They want to keep government being the best, our government, which I'm for that. But what I'm concerned on is that the amount of resources that China is currently expanding, and how far how many countries they're in, and with big industrial complexes that people aren't aware of, really, because you have to dig there for that information. And
I thought it
the
was
number,
I thought it was public knowledge that China was dumping like $1,000 to $1 into third world countries for years. I thought everybody knew
I
that.
I don't. They may think that, but they don't. I don't think people understand the amount of lithium deposit that they're getting from all these different third world countries, and see where we won't deal with third world countries because we're like, hey, you're bad. We're not doing that. They do.
Yeah, and they're doing a good job at it too.
Yeah. So let me just point this out. If China is in different parts of the world throughout strategically, and they have industrial complexes for minerals and so on, and agreements with that host country that they want the China money because they're poor. When if they were to need military action and they wanted to use that as a focal point to launch from or defend from, do you think the host country that we don't have allies with because they're warlords and stuff are going to go with us or with China, who's already there with the money? And my concern is they're going to have multiple locations to be able to advance from. And I'm not talking about an advance on U.S. soil. That's really, the Japanese said it years ago. I'm sure the Chinese would agree. It's a bad idea to try to land on U.S. soil and go across because, like they say, it's true. Like the old Japanese general, everybody in the U.S. has a gun, which is one of the reasons I do remind people on that gun debate that I try to be practical for them. You're not going to stop guns. There's so many here. Two, you're not going to stop the black market trade. If bad people want to get stuff, they would get it, like drugs or guns. And third, the good people who have guns stop a lot of bad things from happening. It's happened plenty of times, plenty of evidence of that. And lastly, one of the concerns from other bad actors in the world is that Americans have so many guns and they know how to use them and hunt and so on. And they would march together. They would ally. They would be a militia, be all in the military. So, but that's just a concern of mine. I don't know where it's going to go. I have no clue. I have no clue how China's going to use it. But I do know that the Chinese they do one thing very well that I personally think is a phenomenal strategy and tactic I've used in personal life and in real world, which is they're surreptitious. They're patient. They do things slowly, and they're strategic when they do them. And I don't know what their end game is. I believe our intelligence community can make some ideas, but are their end game they're trying to control all sources of energy. And we will be dependent upon that energy is my concern. And also launching locations around all these countries that they're friends with now, if they ever want to move military equipment in. That's the main two concerns that I have with China. It's not, believe it or not, it's not the dollar, it's that.
No kidding. Okay. Yeah, I'll be honest with you. Everybody wants the American dream, and they would rather call it the Chinese dream or the Russian dream or the South African dream or the Brazilian dream or whatever it be. Unfortunately, I've been trying to stay out of politics, and I don't watch the news at all. But it seems like it's a dominating conversation when I look at my stock apps. It's a dominant conversation when I go to the gym. It's a dominant conversation when I talk to other people. It's a dominant conversation on Twitter. And I can't get away from it, even if I don't. And I realized one thing. If it's in the news for more than 2 weeks, then it's actually news.
Yeah. So the funny thing is I'm like you. I actually don't watch the news. I have my wife, a couple of friends, and others will send me stuff from the news. And my friends I speak to, because I rely on them because they're in the community and they can give me information that's not classified, but just common sense information, just stuff we know. So I'm like you, I don't watch it because I personally think it's actually not good for your health.
Yeah, man, I'm better for it. I haven't watched it in a year, and I'm far better for it. I get out of my room or I get out of the living room and I go on this rant to my daughter. She don't want to hear that nonsense.
No,
she don't want to hear that.
But we can jump off that. But I was just going to say it tied into what we were saying, and that's the only concern I have is in that regard, which kind of tied in the 2A situation too, which is an active shooter. And I just want people to understand that. And I know they think that they can solve mental health the billions of dollars it would cost to bring back facilities and physicians, and then you would never get the ones who are undeclared that situation or ever walk into a clinic for help. You're never going to stop bad people from getting guns, no matter how many you take away. I'm all about universal background checks. Do it. Red flag it for mental health. Do it. Fine. Go ahead. I'll go through the process.
Yeah,
Whatever.
no, well, hold on. I don't like it for one reason. Who decides if I have a mental health or not?
Well, now,
Now all of a sudden, you've got a bureaucracy designed to limit me.
now
That gets real sketchy real quick. The reason
yeah,
why the Constitution was written in the manner in which it was written was so there would be no blurry lines. I have a right to a gun. I have a right to a gun. And if a bunch of guys can't be good dads and can't keep their kids in line, then everything falls apart and we're all screwed. And it's your fault for not paying attention to him and saying, get the hell out of the bar, go back home and take care of your family, because you're responsible for your neighbor more than you realize. And we're all way more connected than we think. And for years, we've said that whatever happens in your house stays in your house and it's none of my damn business. Well, that's a bunch of lies. Because when that kid grows up and he starts shooting people, who the fuck are you going to blame?
Yeah, well, the point you made on that mental health is actually one that where I could see them using loopholes as government can do.
Real quick, man. All of a sudden, your political affiliation could be a mental disease. Your sexual orientation could be a mental disease.
Yeah.
Your church affiliation could be a mental disease. All of a sudden, because I'm deciding whatever the hell I want to decide, you're on my opposing side. And like I said, there's a bunch of people on two camps, and whatever you say doesn't matter because I can't learn anything from you. Goes even further sometimes. You're actually a political opponent who doesn't even have a right to say anything. I'm going to scream in your face so no one hears what you have to say. If you don't think they would love to take your gun, you're crazy. They would love, because here's the key. The government would love to have a monopoly on violence. Most governments do. And a political party would love to have a monopoly on violence against the opposing side if they believe that they're the only side that's correct. So we could create a little hell here tomorrow by just saying a bureaucracy is going to make the decisions on my rights. I'm dead against that in and of itself. So universal back checks are a no-go, and it starts immediately when it comes up in conversation for me because I've got 12 rights that have no bureaucratic right to anybody legislating whatsoever.
If they were to use stress, anxiety, or some kind of depression that was diagnosed, which they could do to vets a lot with PTSD, if they use, then what you're saying would be a bad call for it if they try to go that route. If they did, because that's what they could really control. Just out the gate, without it being controversial, they could try to say, well, you have depression. Well, you have anxiety. And guess what? About everybody in America at some point can be diagnosed for anxiety.
So now you just took every gun in America.
Yeah. So if you've ever been through a divorce, you've been through depression. I mean, so the fact of the matter is that all will be negative for sure. But back to the original, I'm trying to tell people you cannot, while they're waiting on all this gun political stuff or mental health, you're giving kids and teachers no knowledge. And that's what I'm doing. So forget all the political problems. What you and I can agree on is education is always good. And when you can be told something that would save your life with exact actions that's educational, that's something that should always be accepted. And that's the point of the whole active shooter response and programming, is to give them knowledge, which is not controversial and it's not political because it's not armed, it's not teachers armed, it's nothing else like that. It's knowledge.
Yeah, and that's awesome, man. And I appreciate you more than you could possibly know because there can never be enough people trying to do the right thing. There can never be enough people. And then not only that, but your mission is one with a great aim and a great target that can never be reached, which is one of those perfect adventures that never ends. You're trying to get everybody a little more educated on how to be a little bit more self-reliant, be a little bit more self-aware, be a little bit more it seems like a well-rounded class that I think everybody should take, man. I'm glad we were able to talk about this today.
Yeah. It's what you said, self-reliant, like Great Depression. It's instead of saying my hope is in law enforcement that will come in 14 minutes, my hope is in myself and the people around me. Like you're saying, you can affect people around you. It's the team around me that we can make a decision in 1 second versus waiting 14 minutes.
And I'll be honest with you, with uh, this whole mental health issue, I don't think it's even relevant really, because here's the deal: my neighbor has to be polite with me. I live in Texas. I've got a gun, and he knows it. And my other neighbor knows it. My other neighbor knows it. Although, because everybody's got a gun, everybody's got a gun. So you better check your mental illness when you walk out the door immediately.
Yeah,
Do you understand
yeah,
what I'm saying? And I'll
yeah.
be honest with you, I think we make a mistake when we don't put. There's a time and place for everything. And there's a time and place for wrath. There's a time and place for aggression. There's a time and place. And when I talk to a woman, it's not the same as when I talk to a man face to face, because there's the threat that if we escalate this conversation to the point where you get really pissed, we might be rolling around on the ground in 5 seconds. I could literally put myself in a position where I'm getting my ass kicked if I don't check myself a little bit. So there's that element of the conversation. You don't see it, but it's there, and it
Oh,
has a value to it. Do you understand
yeah,
what I'm saying? And
oh,
more than
perfect.
people realize. And I think
It's
the freedom of owning a gun adds another layer of that reality. Because
it does.
now all of a sudden, my 20-year-old daughter, the only difference between you and her is who practiced more. Her weight is
Yeah,
irrelevant. Her weight is irrelevant.
yeah,
And my daughter's actually, I'll tell you a story. I was at work. She was alone with the kids. She was 17, I think, and we just bought the house. And some lady, some drunk disaster, crawls out of the car and comes up the driveway and demands to meet some weird, bizarre guy. I don't know, Ron something or whatever. She's like, there ain't no Ron here. You got to leave. Well, she's arguing and screaming, I know he's here. She got the gun out of the safe, answered that door the second time, and she had the gun behind her. I didn't teach her that. I mean, I taught her how to use the gun, but I never taught her to be Johnny on the spot. She was ready to kill someone at the front door to protect the family. And I think you have to have that inside of you a little bit. And you never know. You never know when you're going to have to be brave. And that works for children, small adults, young adults, male and female, regardless of whatever it is. There has to be an element of threat of force when you say something. Otherwise, even if you're telling the truth all the time, if you believe in something, you have to act it out. Otherwise, it really doesn't count,
well,
right?
it's what you just. If your kids have no repercussion, they're going to do what they want. In Texas, if there were no guns and you're in New York City, you might want to mouth off a little more and get away with something.
Throw water at a cop.
Exactly. But
I came from Connecticut, dude. You didn't do that that was the New York City police. Those guys took out the mob. I couldn't
yeah,
believe it when I saw these young adults
yeah,
throwing buckets of water. That blew my mind. Blew my
yeah,
mind.
yeah. Well, that's what New York's become in that regard, especially when you have DAs that won't prosecute, and that happens too in a lot of your urban areas. But in Texas as a whole, you're not going to have that. See, I'm actually I'm a fan of Texas. I've been many times. I've been to trainings there. I'm a fan of Texas. I like the mentality, to be honest, in Texas personally. Um, I wish the governor, even though he seems to be a decent dude, would get smarter than spending $100 million last year on the same school safety that he's done in the past. He bought the same car again, bought the exact same car he already has, and not going to change anything. And it's $100 million of tax dollars. But what you're saying is 100% true. When there is it's a thin veil of air is what you're talking about. It exists. And I even teach that people, and for especially a lot of ladies that come to courses or take the online classes we have, I demonstrate what a weak walk looks like, that they've actually done case studies with criminals and said, why did you pick out this person? And of course, they volunteered the information because they get early release at some point down in their sentence. So they've done a great study on that. The way you walk will define if you're a target or not.
I've heard that before.
Oh, it's 100% true. I'll promise you, if you take
a female who's small and petite. Her shoulders bow forward, her chin's down, and she's in her phone, and she has no clue. Just like she was, uh, you know, some form of animal in Africa when cheetahs are looking for prey, and it's the one trailing back. And your gait's very small and small steps, uh, or you see a guy who's 6 foot, 180, 240 pounds, something along those lines. Chest is up. He's up looking around. He's walking with a decent gait, looks confident. They'll tell you every time who they're going to choose every single time.
Path
So
of
that's
least
why
resistance, man. Path of least resistance.
I'm telling women all the time that no matter if you can't be a 6 foot, 250-pound male, but what you can do is you can be looking around, not head down the phone. You can have your shoulders back. You can walk like you actually have confidence, because truly, most of the predators that would be, there's different predators. There's those who steal your handbag or your purse. There's those who are trying to rape. And the ones who rape, typically, if you and I were sitting there and you interviewed them, or you see a lot of them, they're not these overly masculine men for the most part. It's not that it doesn't happen that way, but they want the easiest target. So they'll look at ladies' clothes. If you're wearing jeans and coats and everything else, that's a harder target. If you're wearing a skirt, and you're in heels you can't walk in, or 5 inches, that's an easy target. Doesn't mean they can't wear that, but it sure does. And then I go into kind of their environment and where they should walk and all that type of stuff. But my point is that what you're talking about with in Texas, and you have to watch what you do and check yourself. That aura, that environment, nonverbal, it means a great deal when they know there's repercussions, or they know it's difficult. It's the same concept. But to make sure you get all your questions in, I will be more succinct. I got 10 minutes before I have to be somewhere. Let me let you ask the questions, and I'll just straight answer them.
Well, at that point, then I'm just gonna, as you're making content, what has been your biggest mistake? What do you feel has been your biggest mistake?
Thinking on that one, because there's quite a few. The biggest mistake of all of them.
Oh, any one of them. You got 10 minutes. We might as well do that, because the next thing I'm going to ask you is to go ahead and plug all your stuff, because we don't have a lot of time. Go ahead, man.
Sure. Got it. The biggest mistake would be duration. In the beginning, the biggest mistake that I made up until recently, and I'm still working on, is walking right into, you'll see all my content now, I'm walking right into the conversation. I used to plug a title, body fat in this, or metabolism, or situational awareness this. Instead of doing that, it's going to have that within it, but the first statement I make is already like we're having a conversation like you and I are having now. The best of the best walk right into the conversation, and within the conversation, within a few seconds, that topic is already there. So that is the next level for me, and continuing to make it interesting when you make that statement. It's always a progression. So that's the biggest. Those are the two biggest mistakes.
Very cool. And how do you see this going in the next 18 months? Like, what with all the things you're doing now, do you see any new paths? Do you have a new project or anything that you're about to unleash? What's going on?
Yes. There's several things. There's really, you know how it is. You don't make it overnight. Everybody thinks you do, but you had 5 or 7 or 10 years in before you did it. Our Fit Diesel app really is cutting edge. We increase metabolism, which is something that's rarely heard of. Lose fat and sustain it. It's going to be it's an app. It's already on the Apple Store. Android will be about a day or two away, roughly. But I want to make the most comprehensive science-based app where people can find their metabolism with no calculators. It's your data. Videos of me coaching you on the what, how, and why. Free workout that covers all the science for every level of trainee and takes into account joint health. So anybody 70, 20, a professional athlete, there's all the science of what you need to take into account. And then it has a free BMI, of course, in case somebody wants it. A food tracker that's going to be there in a couple weeks. Now that's going to be cutting edge, because it's actually going to be accurate with the calories. Many of them aren't. It's going to have a free barcode scanner, which now you can't really get free. and it's going to integrate with your weekly calorie planner. It's free. If you upgrade to Macro Coach, it's called, me in computer form, for less than $1 a day, because where I came from in the beginning, you can increase metabolism, lose fat, lean muscle build, takes into account activity consistency, external weight fluctuation factors, virtual coaching videos, all the way through it. And let me just give you one example. There's hundreds of testimonials online at Google, TikTok's testimonial / evidence tab, but one's a really good one. He was told that he was going to be blind, lose digits because he's type 2 diabetic within a few years. And they gave this guy about 3 to 5 years to live, 3 to 6. It's in his Google review. That was it. And he's young, first child that's born. His A1C was 13.7. In case people don't know what that is, that's really bad type 2 diabetic. In 6 months, he's eating right at 1,100 calories more food, and the body fat he's lost and the muscle he's put on, his A1C is 6.6. That is 2/10 away from being pre-diabetic. The amount of people we've taken, truck drivers, anybody else, people who are 60s, 50s. One lady went to Cancun in a bathing suit. She hadn't been one in 30 years. Wow. So the science is something that's new that people aren't really aware of. The science isn't new. Knowing of it's new. So that app is out and it's about to be comprehensive and completely done with that food tracker. So that's really exciting. And I think that's going to be big in the next 18 months. It's going to make waves.
That's awesome. Very cool, man.
Then our Tier 1 Tactics app will be probably about 3 to 4 months away. But what it's going to do is it's going to have free resources, because I'm big on free resources for safety. But it's also going to have courses that are like $19. And it's not a month. You don't have to sign up for years. Just you use it as you want. If you learn all the defensive tactics from standing to ground to weapons in a month, it's yours. Not likely. But if you want to learn restraint escapes and how to get out of them, you could do it for $19. Some of our courses are $29, like home invasion defense. Travel safety covers all whole gamut, even planning ahead and how to do it, simple things. Fundamentals of firearms and advanced for handgun and carbine. Think of the gamut, escape and evasion on foot and in a vehicle. All of those courses, which are online now, but the app, everybody wants one. So it'll be in an app form, and it'll be anywhere from $19 to $29, $39 per month. And that's real resources people can learn. Short videos are a minute, 2 minutes long, sometimes 2.5. That's it, right to the point. That's very exciting that we're going to have. That's a few months away. And then our Safe Schools nonprofit and Live program, the active shooter programming, right now, 2 days ago, the chair in our state over education submitted it to an appropriations bill to be able to put in all the state schools. Now, that's not done yet. We've been here twice before. We've met with the governor. We've met with a lot of people. They know the program. They've vetted the program. And for people out there listening, our website, we literally list it this way on purpose. There is testimonial after testimonial. And we like video testimonials for fitness or active shooter. And top experts are saying this has never been done before. It's exact actions, clients' video testimonials, and it takes into account special needs and handicapped as well.
That's awesome.
Exact.
Yeah, man, that's amazing, man. I'm excited. When did you say that's going to roll out?
Well, which one of those?
Well, the apps. You said one app is in, but you still have some things to add to it, and none of it's on the Google Play. It's all on Apple right now.
Apple right now. Google Play will be like a couple days. Literally, it's we're that close. But it's the Fit Diesel app. So FIT and then the word diesel, like diesel gas, Fit Diesel. So they can find that now and get all the free resources. The Tier 1 Tactics app will be a few months away. And Safe Schools and Live program has been in existence and is right now, and it's been in a lot of places. You can find that at theliveprogram.com. So THE.
And how close are you from getting that through, what did you say, your state legislature?
Yeah, so the state of Tennessee receiving, they'll make that decision in a few weeks. Wow. Now, we've been here before. Last year we were here and they didn't do it. But a lot of things have changed. Nashville happened. A lot of people have heard about it at the state government now. They're aware of the exact solutions because you presented it. So if there's ever a chance for these kids to get it, it's now. So we got some big things happening in a few weeks. We got something big happening now with our Fit Diesel app now. We have Tier 1 Tactics. We have a lot of excitement coming up in the next 18 months.
Very cool, Matt. That's very cool. I appreciate your time, man.
Yes, sir. I appreciate it. Have a great one.
Yeah, you too.